Now, I don't know. I don't know. I cannot see my image. Times I like it when I cannot see my image. Um, I don't know. I cannot see my image. Um, I like it when I see my image. Um, like when I share. Mm, there is an issue with the settings. Um, all right, but this week our focus is literature and feminist propaganda. So that means we extend last week's topic on the question of propaganda, that there's a nexus between literature and propaganda. So maybe before I proceed, I just want to take 30 minutes. I'm sure I will be through in 30 minutes or 40. But before that, what do you know about feminism? What do you know about feminism? What do you know about feminism? Uh, let me let me hear what you think about feminism. What is feminism? What do you know about feminism? Want to move from simple to complex? Actually, there are several strands. There are several strands of feminism, but what do you know about feminism? Anybody?
Yes, sir. I think what feminism is where there's the fight for equal rights for women as
Mhm.
men. Yes.
The fight for equal rights for men and women. That's good. Felix, what do you know about feminism?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Hello?
Hello, can hear
Yeah.
you?
Yes. So my understanding of feminism is that it is a theory. It's a theory that focuses on works of literature that advocates for the right or equal treatment of women in the patriarchal society.
Mm-hmm. Equal rights for, just repeat that last phrase.
Yes, I was saying that it's a theory that
Mhm.
focuses on the analysis of literary works that advocate for the equal right of the women, which are called the marginalized in the patriarchal society.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so, but today we will look at feminism. We'll look at feminism as an aspect of propaganda. In this lesson, we are not going to focus on an exploration of feminism as a theory, but our focus will be looking at feminism as an aspect of propaganda in literature. The last time we looked at, you know, political issues, how politics can form part of propaganda in literature. I remember talking about even works like Ngugi, he really brings out the ideology of Marxism in literature. And I remember finishing by talking about Caucasian chalk circle as a Marxist propaganda. But in this particular lesson, our focus will now turn um, to feminism as propaganda, feminism as propaganda. And as I said last time again, I don't want us to look at propaganda in the negative sense, but I want us to look at propaganda as in a monologic sense, sense. That is the emphasis I want to place on the meaning of propaganda in this particular lesson. So let me now share this screen so that we continue. I don't know. I just don't know what is wrong with the settings, because this time is like I cannot see myself from this side. So I will just stop the video. So literature and feminist propaganda. So the intersection of Du Bois' theory of literature as propaganda and Simone de Beauvoir, existentialist feminism in the second sex, lies in the shared recognition that aesthetics are a site of political struggle. So we are saying that literature is a site of political struggle. So both Simone de Beauvoir and Du Bois, they see literature as a site of struggle. That basically the marginalized will want to underscore, certain points, in the fight for equality, in a society which is polarized, in a polarized society. And so propaganda comes in when there is always that struggle between one group and another. Even politically, there may be a leader who wants to enforce, power, on a society. And so he will use propaganda, to reinforce his position, against another group in the society. And so when we talk about propaganda here, we're trying to say that the marginalized will want to use literature to express a certain view or to bring down a certain ideology. So these were now Du Bois and Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir is one of the most respected feminist thinkers from the West. And I think she even overshadowed Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf is seen as the mother of feminism. Later on, if we get a chance, we will talk about Virginia Woolf. The question of feminist stylistics was actually introduced by Virginia Woolf. Published a book called A Room of My Own. I think it must be A Room of My Own in 1929. And she really brought down the feminist ideology very well. But Simone de Beauvoir in 1989 wrote a book called The Second Sex, which established the feminist theory very, very well. But now in this particular study, we discover that there is similarity between Du Bois, who was a political monologist, and Simone de Beauvoir, who is a feminist monologist. And monologic discourse is what establishes propaganda, as we said in the last lecture. So just as Du Bois uses propaganda to reclaim the Black subject from white authored stereotypes, de Beauvoir's work functions as a deconstructive propaganda that challenges the myth of the eternal feminine created by the male gaze. That while Simone de Beauvoir or Du Bois is fighting for the liberation of the Black person, Simone de Beauvoir fights for the liberation of the woman. And that's why monologism and propaganda become very important to these two scholars. Very important to these two scholars. So let's look at our ELOs. Okay, monologism, we talked about this last time. Where are the ELOs? I want us to, did I forget the ELOs today? So to evaluate how literature serves as a strategic tool for dismantling the dual monologism of white supremacy and patriarchy. Yeah, so you can see it's through monologism. It's through monologism that these two writers are able to combat patriarchy and white supremacy. And that's why, as I said last time, it's very, very important. Monologism is not necessarily a negative. It's not necessarily no, it should not be looked at in the negative. Then critique art for art's sake paradigm by arguing how radical feminist and anti-racist narratives intentionally deploy aesthetic propaganda to define the other. So the question of art for art's sake, that art is just meant for beauty. Art is just meant for beauty. That art is just meant for beauty and nothing else. We are going to interrogate that. Art in the African sense cannot just be meant for aesthetic beauty, because we have so many challenges that we face. And so African literature basically is instructive, and it can be used to combat a certain ideology or a certain vice in the society. And so to combat these vices, sometimes we cannot just create a dialogic work, but we need monologism. Number 3, analyze how Harriet Jacobs utilizes monologic propaganda to expose racial and sexual exploitation in the incidents of the life of a slave girl. So one of the books we are going to look at is The Incidents of the Life of the Slave Girl, and the writer uses monologism to stifle all other voices, to show the negative impact of slavery on the Black people. Number 4, assess Farah's use of aesthetic propaganda in From a Crooked Rib to subvert patriarchal dogma and advocate for gender equity within a traditional Somali context. So we'll see how Farah uses monologism or propaganda to stifle patriarchal oppression of women in From the Crooked Rib. So literature and feminist propaganda, I think this one I talked about it. Then monologism / propaganda. So in Mikhail Bakhtin's terms, both thinkers, that is Du Bois and this lady called Simone de Beauvoir, break the monologic voice of the oppressor. First of all, the oppressor is monologic. For example, the slave master believes that all Africans are like animals. Yeah, so the slave master is monologic, and the patriarchal believer, the believers in patriarchy, are also monologic, because they believe women are the other and they don't matter. And so to combat that, the writer also has to use monologism, has to stifle other voices to do what? To combat the monologic voice of the oppressor, to combat or to counter that. So by injecting the lived experience of the other into the literary canon, they transform literature into a propaganda of truth. Yeah. So literature becomes a propaganda of truth that forces a dialogue between the marginalized and the center. If you are using your work to counter another force, you need monologism. Much as dialogism, as we will see, is very much valued in modern literary creation, there are some situations where monologism cannot be ignored. And we are going to see when it comes to this writer called Harriet Jacobs, and also feminist writers. So feminism as propaganda. So African women writers have since adopted this feminist lens to provide a more authentic but partial female perspective. Amadako, for example, a writer from Ghana, I think, argues that male writers deliberately misrepresented the feminine gender at a time when female writers had not acquired the requisite competence to write. That because most women were illiterate, women were represented in literature by male writers. And Amadako says that most of these representations were very negative. For example, look at A Man of the People. Women are represented as mostly housewives, submissive mothers. And Amadako says that that is not the right image. It is an image that basically favors patriarchy. And Amadako says that now that women have learned to write, they can represent themselves the way they want against patriarchal forces that have oppressed women for a long time. So presently, female writers have the competence and do not just exhibit genuine and fair representation, but exceptionally express patriarchal themes, not pario, patriarchal themes. For instance, expressing long suppressed pain and rejecting the stereotype of the all-enduring mother. So the image of the all-enduring mother, according to Amadako, is a negative stereotype that has been created by male writers. And she believes that this is something women writers must fight or must counter. So Ajay and Frank 2003 note that writers such as Dako, Mariamba, and Buche Mecheta often utilize the irrational or aggressive narratives to highlight gender inequality. So Ajay and Frank 2003 argue that, in fact, these feminist writers now use an irrational and aggressive stance against gender inequality. And this is what we are calling a monologic voice, where you dominate the story as a writer and ensure that all characters adhere to the ideology that you want. Any character who goes against this particular ideology, or any character who goes against this ideology is thrown aside, either dies early or does not have any impact in the work. So in these works, the writing is monologic because women are depicted as victims of systematic physical and psychological violence. So it doesn't matter whether some women are manipulative, like Nora. You look at Nora in A Doll's House. She's very manipulative, but throughout that particular play, you see that Helma Tovard is blamed as an oppressor. Is blamed as an oppressor. That's what we are calling monologism. Helma is not given a chance to show any goodness, but is portrayed through and through as the oppressor. So in the monologic frame, all characters must adhere to the stance of the writer's philosophy. So women are depicted as what? Victims of systematic physical and psychological violence, while men are reduced. Men are reduced to archetypal villains, portrayed as irresponsible drunkards, oppressors, and monsters. And this is what we are calling monologism. A certain ideology is brought down, and every character must follow that pattern. So for de Beauvoir, for example, a man is essential, the woman is inessential. The woman is inessential. A man is essential, the woman is inessential. A woman is inessential. Sorry for that. The man is the norm, the woman is defined in relation to the man. Much as the man has the reproductive organs, the woman has the uterus and ovaries that determine her inferior position. These are some of the major tenets of radical feminism or Western feminism. And so once these tenets are established, for example, here we can see that women are victims of systematic physical and psychological violence, while men are villains, are responsible drunkards, oppressors, monsters, sexual perverts, murderers. And you see that script being maintained in most of these novels. And this is what we are calling propaganda. And that's why as you teach students, you must understand that there are always ideologies under these particular books. And there is some element of propaganda or monologism. At your level now, you must understand that you do not just take literary works at the face value, but you can even have the power to critique, because That is not the reality happening in life. There are men who are wicked, and there are women who are wicked also. Cannot just be women are those righteous and silent and harmless victims. Why is it that you go to prison and you find very many women there who have stolen, they have killed people, they are robbers? But when you look at these works, you discover that women are those saints who must always be, sympathized with. And then men are now the oppressors and are the victims. Yeah, that's why we are saying the monologic voice reinforces propaganda. It reinforces propaganda, which we must identify. So Simone de Beauvoir, that's the picture of Simone de Beauvoir, one of the feminist scholars. You need to read the Second Sex. You need to read the Second Sex and how she established that particular field. So need to move on now. It's not moving. So then we look at Du Bois, No Art for Art's Sake, Du Bois and propaganda in literature. So we are through with scholars in feminism. Let's now mention something on Du Bois and his political propaganda. So Du Bois explicitly rejected the art for art's sake movement. So for Du Bois, there is no art for art's sake. Literature is not just meant for beauty. He viewed this as a luxury of the privileged class, the privileged Western class that served as a mask, for racial inequalities. They insist that literature must not talk about racism, feminist ideas, or masculine ideas. Literature must not talk about Marxist issues. They call it the school of resentment. So Du Bois therefore argues that the primary purpose of creative expression, especially for marginalized communities like Africans, is to facilitate social justice and racial uplift. Yeah. Yeah, so for Du Bois, literature cannot just be for beauty and style for marginalized communities like Africans and women, for example. And then he says, for Du Bois, he says the aesthetic cannot be divorced from the political because beauty is inextricable. That literature must be linked to truth and right. That beauty, if literature is beautiful, then it must be linked to truth and right. Yeah. So we cannot just have men being oppressed, women being oppressed, blacks are being oppressed, and then you are just writing about beauty and style and fantasy. No, according to Du Bois, literature must intersect with the realities of life. So he believed that African American literature had a moral. African American literature had a moral obligation to counter the distorted, stereotypical images produced by white supremacists' discourse for portraying suffering Black people. The writers were not merely creating beauty, they were deploying a strategic tool to dismantle hegemonic prejudices. And this is the same point with feminism. We are not condemning feminist writers. Where women are being oppressed, few women writers cannot just write about beauty, but they must deploy a strategic tool, literature as a strategic tool to dismantle hegemonic prejudices against women. And this is why we are saying literature is a propaganda. We say propaganda, it means you take a side and bring down your thoughts. So literature will never be what? Will never be innocent. So he says look at the first paragraph. Yeah, all art is propaganda and ever must be. That's according to Du Bois. All art is propaganda and ever must be. Mm? Mm. That all art is propaganda. You must take a side and speak your mind. Mm? And speak your mind. That you cannot just continue talking about repetition, euphony, metaphor, the periodic sentence that periodic sentence must express a certain political or social reality, and writers should take sides to comment on certain social realities. Yeah, so propaganda was not a derogatory term for manipulation, but an essential intentionality, that a writer should be intentional about certain realities. Yeah. In the conflict between USA and Iran, which side do you take? Yeah, you must be intentional. It's nothing like writing about beauty, and there are realities that are affecting people's lives. So to Du Bois, any art that claims to be neutral, in fact, is supporting the status quo. Any art that claims to be neutral is in fact supporting the status quo. If you feel that men are being oppressed and you write works that are just neutral, you are supporting the oppression of men. If women are being oppressed and you write works that don't comment anything on that, then you are supporting the oppression of women. Yes, that art must be intentional. Therefore, literature must be a deliberate weapon of truth, in quotes, truth used to reshape the social consciousness of the nation. So, and as a weapon, therefore, that's where now monologism comes in. Monologism now comes in. Sometimes, as a writer, you have to be authoritative. You have to be authoritative with the side you support. Like basically, I really hate greed and materialism. I'm one writer who really hates greed and materialism. And so when I write something on it, I become intentional. And sometimes I can use even authorial intrusion, just to comment on such things. Yeah? So literary writers from the marginalized groups have specific issues to address and have to use literature for expression. And as I move to the next slide, you need to remember this quote by Du Bois, that all art is propaganda and ever must be. Yeah? And the primary purpose of creative expression, especially for the marginalized communities, is to facilitate social justice and racial uplift. Yeah, racial justice and social. Yeah, so all art is propaganda and will ever be. And as a writer, if you don't comment anything on what's happening to people in the society, then you are an accomplice. That is Du Bois. So we need to move on now. So monologism and propaganda in Harriet Jacobs' incident in the life of the slave girl. So this was a slave narrative among the first one to be published. I think there was one by Frederick Douglass, but this is by Harriet Jacobs. And when you read this particular slave narrative, there are very many elements of monologism and propaganda. So in instance in the life of a slave girl, Harriet Jacobs paradoxically employs the structures of monologic memoir to weaponize aesthetic propaganda against the dual evils of racism and sexual exploitation. So these two themes, racism and sexual exploitation of slaves, provoke Harriet to be authoritative and to to destroy, to stifle all other divergent voices, to ensure that sexual exploitation and racism are condemned in America during slavery. So while Bakhtin defines monologism as a single dominating consciousness that subordinates all other voices, Jacobs adopts this authoritative stance to dismantle the competing pro-slavery monologue of the 19th century South. So the American South were very racist and they really supported slavery. And so much as these people were monologic, those are the slave masters were monologic, this writer, Harriet Jacobs, also becomes authoritative, applies monologism to counter the oppression of slaves. Yeah. So in this particular book, we see the tenets of monologism. One, authoritative discourse. By adopting the persona of Linda Brent, yeah, Jacobs assumes a singular moralizing voice. That's how you know monologism. The writer uses a moralizing voice to condemn. There's somebody who read my novel, The Pearl on the Horizon, and this is what he discovered. He said, the novel is full of that moralizing voice. And it's because, there are some things I hate. There's some things I hate in the society. And so sometimes I have to moralize. And this is where now I'm similar to people like Harriet Jacobs, a moralizing voice that mirrors the didacticism of sentimental fiction. Yeah. So this allows the writer Harriet Jacobs to exert total narrative control, ensuring that the reader's interpretation is guided solely by her moral compass. And this is because slavery was very wicked. It was very wicked. This is a master who says he's a Christian, but he is now, disturbing Linda Brent there, impregnating other slave girls, siring so many children, and they believe African women are just animals, and when they give birth to children, they sell them. The slave masters sell those children just like calves and all that. And so this is why Harriet Jacobs is very angry with the institution of slavery. Then we have ideological closure. Another feature of monologism and propaganda is ideological closure. Jacobs does not allow for a nuanced debate on slavery. And why do you think she does not allow for a nuanced debate on slavery? Why do you think? Why do you think? Why do you think she does not allow any debate on slavery? Yeah. She presents the system as an absolute, irredeemable evil, effectively closing off any counter arguments from the slave-holding class. So we are saying, because when the writer is dealing with a lot of evil, most of them moralize, and then they employ ideological closure because there's a lot of wickedness in the society they are representing. Then there is a narrative homogeneity to streamline her propaganda. So every anecdote, from the cruelty of Dr. Flint to the betrayal of white mistresses, is curated to reinforce a singular argument that slavery is a systematic assault to womanhood. Yeah, that slavery is an assault to womanhood. So any character who goes against that is just done away with and is presented as a villain. And it's the same thing we see also in Olekulet's Blossoms of Savannah. Olekulet is so passionate about women's rights that any character who tries to go against that script does not come out successfully. Then fixity of truth, yes. So monologism and the propaganda are characterized by fixity of truth. Of course, it's monologism that brings propaganda. There is a nexus between the two. So within the monologic framework, Jacobs establishes her own truth as the only valid reality, stripping the white master of his power to define her identity. So there is no other reasoning that is accepted in a monologic and work, or a work that is full of propaganda, denial of the other subjectivity. So Harriet Jacobs treats the white oppressor not as complex human, but as a static aesthetic symbol of depravity. So you'll find some characters who are just what? who are just archetypes. They are just symbols of evil. A character like Shylock in Merchant of Venice, he's evil at the beginning, evil in the middle of the book, and evil at the end. That's what we mean by monologism. It's like the Jew of that particular century was seen as a wicked person, and Shakespeare does not want any divergent thought that a Jew can be a good person. So by reducing Dr. Flint to a monologic caricature of lust and tyranny, like Lois Dory, Lois Dory is a monologic caricature of lust and tyranny. Jacobs ensures her memoir functions as an inescapable indictment of patriarchal racism. So it's because the writer wants to condemn, like Ole Kulet wants to condemn patriarchy through the character of Oloisdori and Ole Kaelo. When you find like Leolaringoi, Zito Laringoi, yeah, they are just wicked, all of them, yeah, caricatures of lust and oppression, that is what we call monologism, and we call it propaganda. It is propaganda. So in other words, we're also saying, don't just believe everything. Do not just believe everything, because it may not really represent the reality on the ground. So our text today, you need to read, from The Crooked Rib by Nuruddin Farah. So you can see that it's not just women who write about feminism. Like Nuruddin Farah is a man, but you look at from The Crooked Rib, the work is a feminist propaganda. There's even another one called Gifts, The Gifts by Nuruddin Farah, and of course, Amabako is trying to say that men represent men negatively. I don't agree women negatively in their works, not all of them. That is also a generalization. When you look at even Shakespeare, you look at a work like Othello, Shakespeare represents women very positively, very positively. Look at also Nuruddin Farah from The Crooked Rib and The Gifts. Nuruddin Farah is actually a feminist. Look at Ole Kulet. Look at Ole Kulet. He's a man. Yeah. So that's where I also disagree with the Amadako. But I say that when men write about women, they represent them negatively as mothers. And of course, from The Crooked Rib, this book was published in 1970. Even before Chinua Achebe wrote A Man of the People. Chinua Achebe represents women as, of course, Achebe wrote in 1966, of course, represents women as mothers. But you find Nordin Farah, characters like Ebla are not even interested in marriage. The Ebla just wants to exploit men and revenge against them, without getting married. So you cannot say that all men writers actually have negative, stereotypical representation of women. So Nordin Farah from The Crooked Rib is a landmark in African literature, often celebrated for its female sensitivity despite being written by a man. While rooted in the Somali nomadic experience, the novel integrates several hallmarks of Western feminism, particularly the quest for individual autonomy and the destruction of patriarchal structures. So if you get time, look at this activity using the tenets of monologism, write a term paper of 500 words to ascertain that Farah's from The Crooked Rib is a feminist propaganda. I think this should form another activity because you are supposed to do 4 activities. Then I will grade you out of 40. So this one should form another one of your activity in cell 801. This should be your second, I think. This should be your second activity in cell 301. You write a term paper, and if there is no space on the bottom, you can submit by email. You can submit by email. Submit by email. I think that should be the end of my presentation. Any question? What do you think of Du Bois' belief that all literature is propaganda and will ever be, and any writer who does not take a side is actually an accomplice to the evils in the society? What do you think of that? Any take? What do you think of that before we start presentations? That a writer should be intentional. A writer should be intentional. A writer should take a position. And Dubois is the one who inspired American poets like Langston Hughes. He's also the writer of I Shall Return. That is I Shall Return. I've forgotten his name. He was a very political poet, and they really fought against racism. Black American writers was inspired people like Richard Wright, the writer of Native Son. Really inspired them to write works that countered racism in the United States. In the United States. So what do you think? Let me hear your comments before we start presentation. Felix, what do you think of that?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I agree or concur to Du Bois' ideology that any piece of art must be intentional, and we cannot have just the purpose of art for art's sake. It must address a particular area of concern in the society. So it's absolutely right, because if you look at, I think if you look into the work of art, mostly the ones which came after, we can realize that almost every author picks his ideology, because almost all the novels we analyze are pegged on a particular issue in the society.
But later, when we look at dialogism, you will now see the difference between a monologic work and a dialogic work. Especially when you read Dostoevsky, actually, Bakhtin looks at the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky, and he says that when you look at Fyodor Dostoevsky's work, like Crime and Punishment, characters are very independent. They are not pinned down by the writer's ideology, and every character is free to represent their own ideology. And so, according to Bakhtin, a writer should be democratic. In dialogism, a writer should leave his characters to exercise their freedom of thought and express divergent views to his beliefs, and to him that is now great literature. Bakhtin was a great philosopher, and actually, when I started reflecting on his on his theories, I I learned a lot. And that's what I'm telling you. Even for you people like you want to be writers, please, if you want to be a good writer, you also need to take some masters in literature the way you are doing. There are so many things you will know, so that when you start writing your work, yeah, for example, you can even choose whether to take dialogism or monologism. Yeah, like currently, most works which are loved and they win great prizes, most of them employ dialogic mode. When you read the works of this writer Gurna, the works of Gurna, I've forgotten the first name, Gurna. Although he talks about how immigrants suffer, but you will see a lot of conversation between the white characters have their freedom to express themselves. Black characters have the freedom to speak their minds. Yeah? We will come to dialogism and we will see. We will see dialogism in theory. When we learn theory in literature next semester, you will now see how dialogism is. But because I'm teaching you propaganda now, we have to really focus on Bakhtin's concept of monologism. Partin's concept of monologism. So Sheila, you are supposed to speak. Then there you go. Sheila was supposed to comment. Then she has gone. So I hope she will come. So I think Felix, are you now ready with your presentation?
Yes, I wanted to say something before Sila comes.
On?
The presentation, that is, of what transpired to me.
Speak up, speak up. I'm not getting you. I'm
Okay,
not getting
I hope
you.
you can now get it.
Speak up.
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Speak.
Yes, over there, that is our last class was on, I think Monday. So Thursday with Dr. Simpson.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Then now that is the Friday and the Saturday, I got held up in the sub-county director's office under the ministry because I also act as the one in charge of IT who registers learners in the naming portal so that at least the school can receive funds. Yeah, so on Friday I was there to work on things to do with the people, news, the passwords and everything because our head of institution was involved in accident and was admitted so we had to work on everything. Then I remember leaving that office at almost 10 or 6. I was provided with security to work on that on it. And then on Saturday evening, that is the time I finished the whole process. And the person was sick, suffering from a serious flu. So you find that I've just started working on it, and it is not yet through.
Oh,
It is not yet through. So I do not want to present something which is half-baked.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
I really wish Taylor could present on maybe on because the question was we were either to pick on we were either to pick on Oedipus Rex or a man of the people. So
Or a man of
I
the
wish we
people,
could
yes.
present and maybe use the reference to a man of the people or Oedipus so that at least if I can present tomorrow or if not possible then I'll be given
No,
a room to present.
tomorrow we should just focus on cell 803 so that we don't confuse. So
Yes.
if you cannot present today, you can just present next week, so that we don't get mixed up. Because tomorrow we want to focus on cell 803. Yeah. Okay, Sheila, welcome. Sheila, are you ready with the presentation now?
Yes, I was working on the presentation. I don't know if Felix can start.
You don't know if?
Felix can start, please. I have it
No.
ready.
Felix has just
But
told me that he is not ready. He has had a lot of challenges here and there, and
yes,
he's not ready to present now. So
okay.
let him present next week. So if yours is ready, I think we can listen to you.
Okay. I don't know how to do the slides and the notes at the same
Do you
time.
have
Yeah,
the slides? Are you using a phone or a computer?
I'm using my phone, so it is difficult
Even
to
a phone
use.
can share, by the way.
Share the slides and still read the notes.
Pardon?
It's difficult to share the slides while still
Are
looking at
the
the
slides
notes.
in your phone? Have you downloaded them in your phone? If you have downloaded them in your phone, you can still upload. You can. I remember there's a time I used to teach using my phone during COVID, and I could upload slides and teach my students just using a phone. Yeah. Do you have them in your phone? Do you have the slides in your phone? What we do, you send it to one of your emails, and then or you can send them to me. Send your slides to me. Do you have your You can send them to me and then I share. Do you have them? Have you prepared slides? Sheila, you can send them to my email and I share them for you so that you just explain. Hiyo ni kazi rahisi tu, but mtashika hii maneno because I don't want you to come for your defense if you don't know how to prepare and use slides. Are you able to send them to me, Sheila? I can help you to share so that you just, but next time, keep learning so that I want you to make PowerPoint presentations. When you come for your defense, you have the competence. You have the competence. You people, you are CBC people. We want those competences. They are very, very important. Digital literacy is one of the core competences. I think, yeah, is one of the core competences. Sheila,
Okay.
is it possible for you to share, to send them to me?
Let me see.
Just send them to my email, enyongesa@moot. Then I will help you share, but you will keep learning.